Now that you have finished reading chapters 2 through 5 in the Non-Designer's Design book by Robin Williams, let's do a little overview with some photo samples just to kind of seal the information in more. 1, let's talk about an acronym for the 4 basic principles of design. C for contrast, R for repetition, A for alignment, and P for proximity. If you recall, each chapter had its own focus on each one of these 4 basic principles. Let's start with proximity. It means the physical closeness of something. If 2 objects are near each other, it is assumed that they have some sort of a visual relationship. One of the examples that was shown in the textbook was this business card by Mermaid Tavern. The eye flow of this particular version makes our eyes float from top left to right to bottom to following back to the left again. It is an unclear read to make people go to 4 corners of your business card. It just doesn't show the proximity of the information and how those things can relate to each other. For example, there is no clue when you're done reading. Her revised one groups information together based on similarity. This is where we get into proximity. Items that relate to each other should be grouped together. For example, the Mermaid Tavern. Who's the owner of it? Ralph. Okay, so we have those 2 key things together. Then you have a bit of a break. A blank space kind of means a breather. And then we've grouped the other information together that makes sense for people to find it quickly and go, oh, it's on 916 Bread Street. Awesome. Can I call them? Yes, there's the information. So proximity helps us to organize the eye flow for the reader. Again, the purpose is to organize. The ad on the left of this slide shows spaces between information. So they have grouped information together based on proximity and theme, but they've left a blank space between those thoughts as if you're going to kind of take a mental breath. My boss thinks print ads are not effective. Pause. Please help me keep my job and call him at ... right? So organizing your thoughts rather than letting this be one gigantic run-on conversation gives the viewer and the reader a little bit more clarity and a little bit of the humor at the same time. We see grouping and proximity a lot in indexes or the front of a book telling you different chapters. You can even highlight things. Say that you were having a yard sale and you wanted to put an ad in for all the things that you've got that you'll be selling. Well, instead of just listing everything on the left, which gets people disenchanted and wanting to find things in there, headers, categorize those sections, group them so it's easier to read and it's going to be quicker to read for the viewer. So now knowing what we know about proximity, how does this ad show proximity? It's doing it really well. So the proximity is happening sort of in 2 different ways. Next to each of the cell phones and the app that they're trying to sell, they have the information about the app and they have the price tag for the app attached to and or right next to the individual phone, showing the photograph sample of that app. So they're kind of doing it 3 different ways, and they're doing it for each one. So we get it after we look at one that all of them are going to be the same way. On to 2. We're into alignment. When items are aligned on the page, it creates a stronger, cohesive unit, not unlike proximity. Here's some visual puns. Aligned means things are going to be grouped together and have some common thread of where they start. Think of typing a paper in Google Docs, and you're either going to left align your text, or you're going to center it, or you're going to have it on the right-hand side, right aligned. So aligned means how the text, or even text and photos, seem to be organized on the page. Nothing should be placed arbitrarily on the page, or, as Robin Williams said in her book, willy-nilly. There has to be a purpose as to why you're putting the lettering, the photos, bullet points, etc. in a certain alignment. Okay? This layout on the left is left justified. It's actually double left justified. The largest text along the outer edge of the ad, but right up against the left side. Then inside that space, this information about the pollution is also left justified up against the type. All right. So this is very clever in that they used alignment more than once the same way. Center alignment is not always the strongest, and she emphasized this. There are certain times when it's purposeful to use. This is actually one of those times. The example over here shows these letters very large and centered in the middle of this very close black rectangle. All right. If this had been a long horizontal ad, and there would have been a lot of leftover space on the far right, a lot of leftover space on the far left, it would be very odd and ragged in your leftover spaces in your background. So if you're centering and you have a tight area around your centered letters, it's going to work better. Also, if you use centered, try and stay centered. The rest of this ad is also centered for the most part. Here's some more alignment, a before and after picture. The business card up on top. They're actually following the curve of the cat to type their information. It makes it much more difficult for people to kind of read that information when it's all floaty around the object. It is still going to be cleaner and easier for people to quickly read if you have some kind of alignment. While we're at it, let's flip back one step and look at the proximity. The information is here. They've got their tagline, it looks like here, and where the heck it's at. So great proximity on this, on both of them, even though the second one has alignment that's a lot nicer and cleaner to read. How many different alignments are in this wonderfully busy ad? We've got all kinds of things. We've got the candy. We've got the bold white outlined lettering at the top. We've got left justified over here, right justified over there. We've got centered again. She mentioned many times, try and use only one type of alignment in your design. If you must use two, fine, but the main focus text or information should be one, and the other smaller one would be sort of like an accent area. Please do not have as many versions as this one. On to repetition. On to repetition. See what I did there? Repeat some aspect of the design throughout the entire space. Coke does this beautifully in a lot of their advertisements. Repetition is some element, whether it's a color, whether it's an object, whether it's a word, whether it's a bullet point, some element of your ad repeats, it's going to create the feeling of consistency. So here, probably back 6 or 7 years ago, they had find your name on our Coke bottles. Okay, this is an ad from then, and they've repeated the bottles, but they've done something interesting for us visually as they go from small to large, where our main focus is going to be. But the repetition still occurs. Here we are back to sort of a bullet point reference card. This one's about the Mad Hatter, and it looks like it might be some kind of an instruction card. But the purpose here again is to unify. They've unified through bullet points that are wonderfully aligned, right? And they have the header of each section nicely bolded in a slightly intense weighted font. So that repetition again helps us see clear where we want to go. Repetition. Again, repetition can happen through seeing the product multiple times. I know this is a beer ad and they have sort of the information about their beer and their name brand here, but then they have a running picture file at the bottom that shows each of their flavor brands at the bottom. So the can itself repeated, right? But also advertises the different flavors. This is Michigan University Eastern, and they have a unique sort of ad profile and that they repeat the word my. They're wanting people to come there and become their college, right? So they're giving you information about my degree, my classroom ratio of students, my interest. So they're repeating the my statement over and over again. Their bullets are little arrows, and those are repeated. Notice the header of each of those sections are all italic, where everything else is normal. So there's this wonderful repetition going on, again, through them feeding us information. On to contrast. Repeat some aspect of the design throughout the entire piece, possibly through contrast. So look at this fun ad. We've got furniture. We've got different pieces of furniture. They're kind of repeating. We get the idea of furniture, 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 furniture. But let's look at some contrast. This is a large rectangled shape sitting on top of a small, bright white rectangled shape. This is dominant, bright color red up against black. This is bright white up against some basic colors. There's a contrast here between the glorious couch they want us to see and the information they give us below. That's a nice contrast. We notice that there's color contrast, black versus white. Okay. Horizontal and vertical things can be opposites. This is a big vertical space. This is a horizontal space. You could be contrasting through type, lettering, very flowery and flowing script versus a very non-formal sans serif lettering style. Spacing, this is a big space, this is a small space. So there's so many different ways that you can show contrast in your design. Again, the purpose is to create visual interest, to draw people in, to get their attention, basically emphasis, right? So in this little, this is a newsletter from a college. So they have bright colored sections as a header, but they bring that a section, small sliver of it down here in the middle of the text to give another quote. Great way to kind of reformat that same information somewhere down below. Side note, not a fan that they use the white lettering down here because it's not as bold as the white lettering up here. It kind of gets lost in the little white stripes. Just a note. Again, the idea of contrast is to be bold, be better seen. And so you can see this sort of simplified version of before and after. Whose card is it? It's Jane's. Whose card is it over here? It's too small to tell. Over here, it's bold. Don't be a wimp, right? These are some interesting magazine ads that I love because they're doing similar to the furniture ad that we saw. we have this idea of strong contrast. Photo, information, photo, information, photo, information. The colors contrast, the style of information versus photo, wonderful. One more time, contrast. Before, not much change, very subtle. Over here, dominant. All right, we are at the end